We are back with another episode of High and Tight in the series In the Dugout. We are joined today with Virginia head coach Brian O'Connor, and we're getting ready to get started.
Okay, let's do this thing.
Coach, one of the busiest men in America, especially this time of year. I appreciate you taking the time to join me this morning.
Well, Jason, thanks for having me on. I'm a big believer in PBR and what you all do, and been to so many of your guys' events over the years, and just excited to join you today.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. I know we gotta value your time. You're spread pretty thin, especially this time of year. Now let's walk through basically your history and your path to where you're at now as far as coaching goes.
Well, thanks for asking, Jason. I appreciate that. I've been very, very fortunate in my career. I grew up in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is right across the Missouri River from Omaha, Nebraska. Got the opportunity to be a right-handed pitcher at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. So just went right over the river to college and had an incredible 4-year experience in the Creighton program. Got to play in the College World Series in 1991. And after my 4-year career, I was drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies and pitched for 1 year, actually in Martinsville, Virginia. And who would have thought, 10 years later, I'd be the head coach here in the state, and pitched for 1 year, and then in the off season was offered the pitching coach job at my alma mater, and was the pitching coach for 1 year at Creighton. And then after that 1 year, I was offered the pitching coach job and recruiting coordinator job at University of Notre Dame. Had the chance to sit right side by side one of the great all-time head coaches in college baseball, Paul Maneri, and was his pitching coach and recruiting coordinator for 9 years. And in the summer of 2004, I was offered the head coaching job here at Virginia. So that was 21 years ago. It's been a great 21-year journey here at UVA, and we're just excited for year 22 getting going this spring in about 4 or 5 weeks.
I tell you, Coach, and I know that's a story and kind of the common theme with a lot of college coaches who stay in it long enough. You've seen a little bit of everything from Omaha to Martinsville to South Bend and back to Charlottesville. So you've seen it from end to end, basically.
Yeah, it's Jason. It's been a fun journey. Coaching's an incredibly rewarding profession. It's just I was speaking at an event last night, and they said, "Well, Coach, how long are you going to do this for?" I said, "As long as the game will let me. Like, I don't know what else I would do in life, right? I'm so excited. On Sunday, we have our first team meeting. On Monday, we have our first practice. And what I love about it is building teams, and each team every year is a little bit different, for that team to have the best experience they can possibly have. And then the individual players, for them to develop as not only the best players they can be, but also the best men they can be. So when they leave the University of Virginia, they're prepared for whatever they're going to do in life." Now, Jason, a lot of them go on to professional baseball. We're very fortunate to have good players here. So the development part of what we do at UVA is so important to every baseball player that comes here to go to school and play baseball.
And I think, you just setting them up on a tee for me. I think that kind of leads into the nuts and bolts a little bit. You talk about, getting great young men, and obviously, I haven't been doing this forever, but over the course of my time, you start to see, I guess you could say, maybe some common trends with maybe recruits and certain things that stand out. I like to, at least think outside looking in, like, something. I'm going to give an example of a freshman you have there now, James Nunley. And then, some guys, I guess, that maybe I've known a little bit better gotten to know a little bit. Guys like Nunley and Griff O'Farrell and Luke Hansen, just through some of our stuff that we've had an opportunity to work with them, you see some common themes with those guys. But what would you say are some things that you think are very important to have in incoming recruits?
Well, Jason, I got to tell you, it starts with, in the player acquisition standpoint, it starts with having great coaches. And I've been incredibly blessed to have, tremendous coaches here. Coach Mack, obviously, him and I working side by side for 21 years. And, his evaluation skills to bring the right guys here from a position player standpoint is elite, and then the development program that we have for them. And then I've been fortunate in the 21 years to only have 2 pitching coaches. Carl Kuhn was our pitching coach for 16 years, and then now Drew Dickinson on his 5th year with us. And those guys do a terrific job. And Matt Kirby's now our recruiting coordinator, and he's been with us for 13 years. So the consistency of our coaching staff in the player selection, knowing what we're looking for, but also in the development part of it is really crucial. That's where it starts. And then it's really kind of understanding as a program, what do you look for? Right? We could have an hour-long show, Jason, on the baseball aspect of it, right? Certainly you can watch our program over the years, and you mentioned 3 of those players, Hansen, Nunnally, and O'Farrell. On a position player side, you're looking at really good athletes, right? Guys that can do more things, the guys that are not just great hitters, and we have a lot of great hitters here, but it's, how do they defend? How do they run the bases? How can they impact a game more than just the bat? So we look for the well-rounded, athletic, baseball knowledgeable type player from a position player standpoint. And that's really been our trademark. Coach Mack, Coach Kirby have done a great job of identifying young position players that in that phase of 18 to 21 or 22, that they can come here and get a lot better. They have the athleticism to not only impact a game and win a game for Virginia, but for them to develop and leave here as great prospects. And, from a pitching standpoint, certainly you look for high upside guys that you believe that when you identify them at 16, 17 years old, that you believe that when they come into your program, that you can add strength to them, they can get better, continue to improve. But pitch at the ACC level, you have to have stuff, but pitchability wins out, right? You got to be able to execute, you got to be able to spin the ball, right? And so there's a lot of facets that we look for from a pitching staff standpoint, recruiting here to Virginia. And then, that's kind of the physical side of it. But there's so much more that goes into it, right? It's, how competitive are they? What's their competitive spirit? How do they handle adversity? That's a big one. I'll tell you, just a quick story that, a number of years ago, I went to see a pitcher pitch in Atlanta, Georgia at a tournament, and Coach Kuhn had seen him a couple of times, and I went down there to Atlanta to watch him pitch, and the young man probably had the worst outing that he's had in his high school career, right? And so I called Coach Kuhn after, and he says, "Hey, what'd you think? You loved him, right?" And clearly he was a 6'3", quick arm, projectable guy. He's like, how'd he do? And I said, "Well, hey, Kay, is he like, he gave up like 7 runs." And he's like, "What? Jake's never given up 7 runs. Oh my gosh. Why do you still like him?" And I said, "Because he failed." And I watched about how he handled the umpire squeezing him in the game, the shortstop making an error, the game not going his way. I watched how he handled himself on the mound when it wasn't going well for him, and how did he handle himself in the dugout in between innings, right? He competed. He never complained. He wasn't complaining about the umpire. I could tell it was a bad day for him. I could clearly see his stuff, his raw stuff. But listen, Jason, you know this. When they come to our level, they're going to fail a lot. So how a young player handles adversity is so important. You don't want them to be apathetic about it, right? You want them to care, but how they care is so important because they're going to come here in the fall of the freshman year and all of a sudden they're going to pitch 3 innings in an inter-squad scrimmage and they're going to give up 2 home runs in 3 innings and give up 5 or 6 runs like they've never done before, right? And so that part of it is what's their competitive spirit? How do they handle adversity, right? That the game brings them, because at this level, there's going to be a lot more of it than they've ever experienced.
Yeah, and I think just what little bit of time I've had an opportunity to spend around Coach Mack. You talk about Coach Mack and the staff and stuff, and some of the conversations that we've had about the multi-sport guys and the competitive spirit and guys who just want to win and just kind of figure out a way to get things done. And I think when we're talking about multi-sport guys, and I know that's just kind of tying in with what Coach Mack was talking about, like those guys are in a bunch of different settings, and no, they may not be the best athlete or the best player on those other sports, but it puts them in different environments. And like you said, it allows that failure to happen, and then it allows them to, figure out a way to win.
Well, Jason, I totally agree with Coach Mack. We've always been on the same page of that. He's a former football player. I'm a former football player, right? I played 3 sports in high school. I know out there over the last decade how that's changed quite a bit. And that's okay, right? I mean, there has been more specialization, right? Where maybe somebody is just playing baseball, right? I would love a player that plays 2 sports in high school, but that you just don't, it's not as frequent anymore. But what I talk to young players about is whatever you do, it's about being competitive. If you only play one sport and you go to a hitting coach in the winter, getting ready for the spring season, what are you doing? Yeah, there's a skill instruction part, but at some point when you're in that cage every day, compete at something. How many balls can I hit to the back of the net in a row, right? Playing games with other teammates, not games out on the field, but maybe in a batting cage, to remain competitive, to play to win at what you do. Even if you're playing with your 2 brothers and you're playing pickup basketball in the driveway, win, right? Play to win, because what happens is it helps them learn how to handle when they do win with humility, right? But also when they don't win, right, to handle it the right way. So even though we're in a world now where there is a lot of just only baseball players, there's still opportunities and ways to draw that competitive spirit out in them, in their training or whatever it is they do. They go to a PBR event and they get to, throw 2 innings, or they get 3 or 4 at bats or whatever. You're still competing. You're still playing to win, right? And putting that kind of pressure on yourself is so important.
Yeah, you've had a couple of pretty good multi-sport guys there.
Yeah.
Recently, Griff was QB1, and you got Jay. Was a big quarterback in high school and had some time in the football team at UVA, and then Luke was an outstanding quarterback. I'm sure there's plenty of other examples. Again, it's tough for me just because my area, my borders are Virginia. So,
yeah. Well, we've been fortunate. Like 2 years ago, Jason, I was making a comment to some of the players. Like, it was amazing how many high school quarterbacks we had on the field. Kyle and Aiden Teal were high school football players. Luke Hansen was a phenomenal high school quarterback in the state of Virginia, right? You had Jay Woolfolk, you had Griff O'Farrell. We had conversations back and forth all the time. Who was the best quarterback? I used to kid Jay Woolfolk when he was playing football here and also playing for us. I said, "Hey Jay, I don't know. You might be the 3rd best quarterback on our baseball team, just kidding with them. But, that was awesome. And you love to see that because, like a quarterback's a leader. And you think about those players that I just mentioned, those 5 players that played high school football and played quarterback. Those guys have all been leaders in our clubhouse since they've been here.
So it's a common theme for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, College World Series appearances, 7 of the last 16 years. I would say that's pretty good. 2 championship series appearances, 1 championship. Outside of good players, what would you attribute that level of sustained success to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that quite a bit. We're proud of that. We're proud of those College World Series appearances. We're equally as proud of the player development and our guys moving on to the next level as well, because that's part of the reason they come here. But I'm a big believer that you can accomplish both, right? You can accomplish player development and help them realize their dreams in this game of baseball at the same time while winning for the University of Virginia. And, it all comes back to standards, Jason. Like, prior to the players even getting here, they clearly understand what our standards are. Standards aren't winning. Standards aren't Omaha. Standards are, how do they go about their business every day to be the best player they can be, right? And be the best teammate they can be. It's how they run a hard 90 to first base every day. And when they don't do it right, they do it over again because there's a certain standard of which we ask them to go about their business. So that, for me, I would tell you, is the key. It's the consistency. It goes back to the first thing I talked about, the consistency of our coaching staff and the consistency of the standards of which we ask our players to go about their business every day, win or lose, whether it's a great day or not so great day. And then within those standards, there's the development process that goes on every day. Every morning, we have a staff meeting at 10 a.m. Every staff member's in there. We have 12 staff members on our staff, player development people, video people, trainers, strength coach, everybody. And sometimes those meetings are 2 hours long to plan that practice that day so we can be the best for our guys so they can continue on this development plan to be the best players they can be. So the development's part of it, but it really goes back to what are we asking them to do every day and holding them accountable to that. A lot of people talk about, standards that they hold their players to, but they don't hold them accountable to it, right? The key thing is when you have standards in your program, are you willing to do what it takes to hold them accountable to that standard, right? And that is the key in our program. Our players know that if they don't do it the right way, then they're going to be told and they're going to do it the right way. And any great player that aspires to play after the University of Virginia, they're very driven and they want to be held accountable to those standards. So the accountability part of it's huge.
Yeah, I think, I've had an opportunity to come out and see y'all a couple of times. The past 2 falls, I think to open spring, and it's definitely a different look in the fall in terms of, I think it was like, what do y'all call it? The Blue Orange World Series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think the past 2 years I've been there, and then the post practice or post game when the guys are getting some work in.
Yeah.
Just like outside looking in, you don't think about that, you don't see that, and while it may be like different than something that other programs do, you can see like everybody knows that expectation, and everybody, I don't want to say falls in line, but you get on board.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's kind of got to be rowing that boat the same way, and kind of know what the standard is in order to get where you want to be. Funny story. I know you know Coach Haynes, and from your time and in his time at VCU. He was my high school coach, or one of my high school coaches, and that was the one thing that stood out about him is like, yeah, in high school, like he could be a bit tough. But as you got older and especially removed from high school, you're like, okay, this is why he did this. So when I went back to coach, I'll never forget my assistant's son was on our team, and we were playing a scrimmage game. I told him, I said, hey, we have to run everything out, and if you don't run it out, you can go back and do it again. And this was, I guess, my second year, so I guess he thought I was kidding or whatever. Uh, he lines out. My assistant coach is coaching first base. He lines out. He takes 2 steps out of the box and stops. And I called Tom, and the umpire's like, huh? I was like, he's going back to home plate and running again. So we stopped the game, and he went back and ran it. And from that point forward, did not have an issue with anybody running it out. And like, it's just you got to be able to got to be willing to do the uncomfortable. And the tough make the tough decisions. I don't have to make anywhere near as many tough decisions as yourself.
Well, Jason, I'd say first of all, thank you for doing that for that young man, right? That's what they need. And sometimes you don't want to necessarily always call out a player in front of a group, but it goes back to if you let players slide on certain things, then it just ravels out of control, right? And they might not look at it at that time, just like Coach did for you, right? Is you're doing the right thing to help that young man, right? And at some point they see it and they understand it. And again, that's my example right there. You can have standards, but if you're not willing to hold them accountable to it, then you really don't have standards.
They're just things you say.
Yes, that's right.
All right, now with the individual player success, and you talk about draft picks and all, 13 what I count 13 first rounders in your time, 18 draft picks in the last 4 years. That's not counting high school guys that were potentially coming in, that took their path to the draft, and a fair number of guys that have made it to the show. You got your Andrew Abbott's and Ryan Zimmerman's and all those guys that you've played a large role in. It's been a draft factory over the past few years and during your time. How big, you talk about player development, how big has your player development been in that success? What's the secret sauce? What we got? We got to give some nuggets.
Well, thank you. We're proud of that. We're proud that 31 players over the last 2 decades that have worn our uniform have went on to play in the major leagues, and certainly the first round draft choices. But the first round draft choices, the key is that they end up playing the major leagues, right? I mean, it's great to be a first round draft choice, but you're a first round draft choice for a reason. To ultimately that club believes that you're a major league player. So again, the so-called secret sauce kind of starts out with the player selection, the acquisition of the player, finding the right young men that understand and really want to be challenged to be the best that they can be. That's where it starts, right? A lot of people look to us and say, well, geez, there's something special going on there. There might be, but it starts, the special thing going on here is the right young men. Right. And so that's where it starts. And then it's putting them into a system from day one that, not that they're all doing the same thing. I mean, all you have to do is watch our hitters and our pitchers. They all hit and pitch differently. The hitters, the setup's different. Their hands are in different places. They do different things, but it's taking their skill set and maximizing it and making it the best that it can possibly be. And then it's, as I said, every day we're meeting saying, what are we going to do today to be efficient and help these guys be the best that they can possibly be? And so there's a plan, there's a detailed plan that, we continue to shine up every year because the game changes a little bit, right? And that we tweak and change. We're doing some things, we'll do some things in preseason practice this year that, we weren't doing 15 years ago. And that's the evolution of us as coaches of learning. There's technology, there's different things, different ways to teach now that were not available to us 15 years ago. But it's a detailed plan that we put together that's consistent, and they know when they come to the ballpark every day that it's going to be buttoned up, and that plan is going to be in place for them to be successful. But all of that said, Jason, nothing replaces hard work. It starts and ends with hard work. There's a lot that goes into that hard work for the players. But if you want to be a successful baseball player, if you're a 16-year-old out there, a 17-year-old out there that aspires to be a college baseball player and then aspires to play past that, make no mistake about it. First and foremost, it starts with work. Because when you work and work the right way, you gain this thing called self-confidence. Right. And when you're in the batter's box and the game's on the line, or a young player's at one of your events, say he's at the Futures game and he's got all these college coaches there, if he has worked hard and prepared to be successful, when he's in that moment, the moment's not too big for him. All right. So it starts with a certain kind of work every day that has to happen. Right? Because again, I go back, I'm a huge believer in this. When you put the time in, the right work, that self-confidence that you gain is a game changer. It can separate you from the competition. So our guys work really hard. It's very detailed and organized and focused, but that's where it starts with us.
All right, now you talked about future games a little bit. I talked to, I say everybody, all the coaches that I've talked to, that's kind of been, a talking point. Like, it's important for us. And I think, at least by the turnout, I feel like it's an important event for y'all. But I do want to talk about it in a different light with you today. Since I've been around, not a super long time, I've seen the UVA staff every single year at future games. But I think this past year had a little different feel for you in particular. How was it having Dylan at future games, more so like just on the experience side, just the dad side of it?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. I'm extremely proud of him and the work that he's done and the opportunities that he's earned and he has in front of him. But it was different. I was excited to be down there. Have come to many PBR events over the years and covered them from a recruiting standpoint. But this one was different. When your own son's out there competing, pretty cool, Jason. Like really, really awesome and really rewarding, because all these years you've been watching everybody else's kids, right? And I got to tell you though, being in the dugout, last out for a national championship, that was easy compared to watching your son pitch at the Futures game, but just the excitement that he had of being there, knowing that it's the highest level of players, the pressure of being at that event, and just awesome. It was I thoroughly enjoyed it, and what it did for him. Everybody, Jason's on different developmental tracks. I think that's what's really important for the parents and the players to understand, right? It's not going to always go like we all see on this phone about commitments early and things like that, the best players and everything. Everybody's always on a different development track. So patience and how that pays off is important. I always say to players, be impatient with how you work, but be patient with what the results are in development, right? And Dylan, my son, is a perfect example of that, right? He happens to be 6'5" and long and everything, and everybody loves that in recruiting, but it took a little bit longer than some others for him to start to put it all together. So patience is so important. And we all don't know when that's going to happen. I've got so many stories over the years of guys you recruited when you saw them when they were 17 and what they look like when they're 18, 19, or 20. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. So awesome. It was an awesome event, like it is every year. I highly recommend it for any player that has a chance to experience it, because the magnitude of the amount of coaches there is just amazing. You know, I mean, we had 3 coaches just from our staff covering that event, right? And so, you know, really great event, incredibly rewarding, unique experience for me this past year for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. You talked about it a little bit. You know, I have 2 kids. My daughter dances, so uh, you know, you just up there and just she's happy and dancing, and so like let her go. And son's not a super athlete to put it mildly, but he likes playing soccer and stuff, and he's actually gotten a little bit better. And watching him play, and he's the goalie, so you know at the end of the day, kind of everything's kind of on him.
Yep.
Um, so watching him just like playing rec soccer, uh, you know, gets the nerves going a little bit. And I will say I stand back and just kind of watch and don't really say a whole lot, you know, because I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, uh, being out quite a bit. So I was wondering like how how nerve wracking it was for you, um, even as many times as you've been in that environment, like just a different feel.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was I was more nervous for that than you are a national championship game, you know. And but obviously, you know, being in highly competitive athletics, you know, I dealt with disappointment, dealt with failure so much. And you know, my recommendation to parents out there is, you know, what happens on the field on a particular day, it is what it is, right? It's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems, right? But no matter what happens out there, encouragement is really, really important. And again, for me, it goes back to, you just never know when it's going to come together for your son or daughter, right? And so in the end, when the competition's over, you're a parent, right? First and foremost. And sometimes we want it so bad for our kids, but we always have to remember it's their experience, it's their journey. And it's so different for each individual. And I think it's important for us as parents to look at it that way, because we never want to see our children hurt. We want to see them be successful. That's just human nature of how we are. But we always have to evaluate, how are we handling them between those times of competition, and how do we talk to them? It's incredibly important in them being the best possible version of themselves.
Now, I kind of when I'm talking to parents or families, um, maybe at a recruiting thing or whatever, like I always tell them like, hey, no matter how many kids you have, no matter how many times you go through this, I'm sure even like if someone was advising recruitments or whatever, it's never the same, right? Like, would you agree with that? I mean, even you've done a million of them yourself, and I'm sure uh, you were kind of on the other side of the coin, if you will, with Dylan. But would you agree that every single one is different in some capacity?
It is, you know, it's different for everybody, and just because the recruitment process or the development process for one player isn't necessarily the same way it's going to be for another, and it's incumbent upon the player and the parents to figure out for their young person, you know, what's theirs going to be like, and all of them, you know, look different. For my son, it happened to be the best thing for him was to reclass a year and give himself another year of development, because you know he was kind of a latecomer, and compared to the system of that we all see out there, and that extra year makes a huge difference. But every one of them is different. It's got to determine what is the best route for that individual. I mean, we could talk on here all day. I've got some crazy stories about some players, you know. So hey, Chris Taylor, who's got a huge contract with the Dodgers. He was the third infielder that we recruited in his class, right? And I remember Coach Mack and I talking to him and saying, Chris, you need to understand that, Stephen Bruno and Reed Gragnani are already committed to us. Do you want to do this, knowing you're the third infielder in the class? Coach, bring it on. UVA is where I wanted to go. And now the guy, not only was he a great player for us 3 years at Virginia, he's had a great major league career. And, he just, in the recruitment process, he was just behind a lot of the other players. Okay. But it ends out working out how it should work out. Right. And I'm just a big believer in what I've seen over the years that, they're all individual situations. Support your son, right? And have trust and belief that the process is going to work out and he is going to end out at the school, if he's fortunate to, that he should at that point in time in his life.
Now, Reed Gregnani, there's some names from the past. Coach Reed Gregnani, Mills Godwin, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, what year was Chris Taylor? I know he was Cox High School. What year was Taylor?
Well, CT got a huge hit for us in 2011 in the Super Regional to send us to our second trip to Omaha. So he was in that 2010 to 2012 range here at Virginia. So,
okay. So he was
I think he was an 09 high school graduate.
Yeah, it was a pretty good stretch of talent that came through with guys like Zim and David Wright and DJ Upton and Justin Upton and Kadier and Mark Reynolds and the list goes on and on.
The beach was pretty loaded in that decade there. I was on a panel at the ABCA convention sitting next to Lee Banks, and we were answering questions to a group, and just sitting next to him and thinking the players from the Tidewater area that he's coached over the years and been exposed to is just amazing. And this state is so great for high school baseball. I get a lot of people, Jason, that ask me, why Virginia? When you moved on from Notre Dame, why was Virginia the spot? Well, there's a lot of answers to that question, but one of the big three answers to it is the high school baseball in this state. At Notre Dame, 2 consecutive years, I had recruited really good players out of the state of Virginia when I was at Notre Dame. So I had a pretty good feel and understanding of the players in this state. And if you're a state school here, what an advantage. And there is great high school coaching in this state. There's great player development, and there's a lot of great players that come out of the state. And that's been a key part of our success here at UVA is you can't get them all. You got to find the ones that are the right fit, right? But is the players from the state of Virginia coming to our program and the impact that they've made over the years?
2 quick nuggets. One, I'm assuming that you recruited this young man is one of the 2 that you're talking about at Notre Dame. Last name Edwards?
Matt Edwards. Man, he could hit. He had that squatty stance, and man, he hit a lot at Notre Dame. I wasn't able to coach him in the back half of his career because I came to UVA, but yeah, absolutely. Matt had a great career at Notre Dame, and was proud to have recruited him and coached him.
Well, that year they won the state championship. We played them in the regional semifinals, and I came in that game, and it was Edwards, Josh Coffey, and another one. There was somebody else who. They were loaded from top to bottom. I come in relief, and it's at Shepherd Stadium, and the place is going wild and all this stuff. And I punched all 3 of them out, including Edwards. I think I might have been under bat speed. I'm not sure, but punched all 3 out. And I was a reliever, so I was high energy, high adrenaline guy. I was a closer in college, And sometimes you get those closers, they're one inning and they kind of lose that juice. I come back out and I was like a low slot sinker guy, and my stuff flattened out and got up in the zone, and I got turned around. Like it was really good for 3 hitters, coach. But no, talking about the UVA or the Virginia talent, the state of Virginia talent, I give Shooter. That's kind of a common person for us, person in
Yeah.
common for us. I give Shooter stuff all the time about, everybody always gives the love to Florida and Georgia and California and stuff, and every single year continue to turn out the Johnny Farmellos and the Nunnallys and the Eldridges and all these guys. Like, hey, there's pretty good players in Virginia too. So
Yeah, there sure is, and like I said, that's been a lifeblood of our program here, and that starts with the great high school coaches we have in the state, and and any time, Jason, you're dealing with large metropolitan areas, Northern Virginia, Richmond, the Tidewater area, and the history of baseball in this state. It's going to deliver some really, really great prospects. So, whether it be on the pro ball out of high school or in the colleges across the state, this state has done a really great job for a long period of time.
now, kind of like summing things up a little bit and talking to younger players and families, if you could tell them, one, two, three things in terms of how they can continue to work while you wait, if you will,
Yeah.
and prepare themselves for when that time comes and when that ball is rolling with the recruitment process. Like, what would you say they should do, or advice you would give for how they can prepare?
Well, I would say first, it's about the process. I'm not saying the recruiting process. It's about the process of their development. Spend the most time thinking about, how do I get better? Okay. If I continue to get better as I matriculate through high school, right, and the skill set is good enough, the opportunities will be there. There's 300 Division I baseball programs in this country. There's Division II, there's Division III, there's NAIA, there's junior college. And the way baseball is nowadays in college athletics, right, you have the ability to start at a lower level and continue to develop. Right. So never turn your nose up at any opportunity, because if you love playing baseball and you want to play at the next level, there's a lot of great opportunities out there. But get involved mostly in the process of your development. How can you get better today? And then how can you stack those days, weeks, months, and years up? Because you never know when it's going to all come together. Get in the weight room, right? Do the proper training and be consumed with it, because that's what a lot of your peers are doing, right? And so get consumed with, okay, well, if I just go to this one event, I'm going to get recruited. Well, listen, if you're not prepared and equipped when you get to that event or play on that team, it's not going to work. So understand, be patient with what the results are, and get out there and work and start stacking the days up. And then, a lot of us don't have control of what high school we go to, right? But play great for your high school team, right? Put yourself in a summer and fall situation on teams that are competitive, and put yourself in the best possible competitive development environment you can. And then select things outside of that would be good for you, not to get exposure. Exposure is the byproduct of being in their arena to compete. We brought up the futures games earlier, right? Awesome. Tons of college coaches and everything, right? That's a byproduct of being prepared and equipped when you get there. So let's make sure we're as prepared and equipped as we can with our work every day, so when that opportunity does present itself, that we're ready for it.
Yeah, I think that last part is huge. Is it's not getting there, it's being ready for the moment, kind of when you do get there.
JB, that's like what I tell all of our recruits, right? When they commit to us, okay, and they're coming to Virginia, that just gets your foot in the door, man. Okay? Your foot's in the door. You have the opportunity. From when you commit until you actually put on the uniform in the fall of your freshman year, what are you doing? Because if you stop, okay, by the time you get here, you're not going to be prepared for it, and it's going to pass you by. So even when you do commit to that particular school, it doesn't stop. That's just the opportunity. Now you got to be prepared for the opportunity. So that's what I share with our recruits, but it's no different than the high school player that's searching for the opportunity, right? The opportunity is the end. It's the byproduct of what the work is and the preparation to have the opportunity.
Now wrapping up, kind of like, I guess, a little fun look back, if you will. I know in my short time of coaching, it wasn't always the games. We were fortunate enough in 18 to have some pretty good players and win a regional championship and go to the state tournament and all that stuff. But looking back, like, my favorite time, if I could, say one favorite time I had as a coach, or one of my best moments, was taking our team spring break trip and spending 5 days in a house with those knuckleheads, and dinners together, and all that type of stuff, right? Like, that's what it was for me. What would you say? Obviously, national championship and the wins and things like that. What would you say are kind of some standalone moments for you as a coach and as a leader of the program?
Well, I think what we have to remember, Jason, is this. You brought up the spring break trip and the dinners and things like that. Because you as a coach remember those times and love those times, the winning came because of that, right? I think so many times we look at the wins, the national championship or the big wins, right? But what led up to that, right? It's those little moments. And being here 21 years, there's just so many of them that it's hard to pinpoint just a few. But I'd share a couple of things. One, Coach Mack and I's first 4 years here, we had hosted a couple of regionals. We had been to a regional every year, but we couldn't break through and win that regional, and had been 4 straight years. And what's it going to take for us to break through? And, we were young, hard charging coaches, kind of like wanted so much to win the regional, get the super regional, get to Omaha. And we learned something about coaching, right? That, we as coaches wanted it so bad that at that time of the year, we were so uptight because of our desire of what we wanted to accomplish. And those first 4 years taught us that, when we got to championship time at the end of the year, the hay was in the barn, man. Okay. Everything was set. Our standards were being lived up to. We just needed to let the players play, right? And kind of loosen up a little bit, not get on a guy because he didn't execute something in a game, just because they're going to take our lead. And that was a pivotal time in our coaching development that we kind of changed a little bit when it got to the end of the year. And that 5th year, we finally broke through, won the regional, super regional, made our first trip to Omaha. And then in 2010, we were one of the top teams in the country. We were playing here at home and didn't get to Omaha. That 2011, that Chris Taylor hit against Irvine to send us to Omaha for the second time. Don't get me wrong, losing the national championship in 14 and winning it 15 was incredible. But getting to Omaha that second time ever, because you do it once, you taste it, you want to do it again, you just don't know if it's ever going to happen again. Same was kind of from 14 to 15. We lost in the national championship in 14. You're sitting there as a coach wondering, are you ever going to have that opportunity again? And then that next year to be able to have that opportunity to punch that ticket was huge. But Jason, I agree with you. It's the It's the little moments in the dugout. It's after a tough game's over, talking to a player and picking them up and them going out and performing the next day, right? Those are the little lessons that, and we've got hundreds of them throughout our careers here at Virginia, that's what it's about, right? As a coach or a player, if you're always about the end result, hoisting the trophy, if that's what drives it, you're missing it, man. Then you'll never host the trophy. If you're not about the small little moments, and that goes back to the young players out there in player development, be about the small moments, be about the development every day, because you'll never be able to commit to that college or hoist that trophy if you're not about the small things.
Now, you face some pretty good arms and pretty good players along the way. And once you get to that point of regionals and super regionals and college world series and all that stuff, once you get to that point, you're facing really, really good arms. Could you say a pitcher or two that is the best arm you've ever seen in college? It doesn't have to be like long term after college, but just at that time.
Well, I'm sorry about the banging. They're doing some work at our stadium. If you can hear it in there, I apologize. It just started up, but there's been so many of them, right, at our level. I mean, so many guys that have went on to have great careers in the major leagues that we have faced over the years. There's one that really stands out to me. Year one, 21 years ago, facing Justin Verlander at Old Dominion. And we lost the game down at Old Dominion, and we were off to the greatest start in the history of Virginia baseball. And in the middle of the week, we went down to ODU and drew Justin Verlander, and I remember it because I remember talking to the team in right field after we lost the game. And it was a pretty defining moment in the development of our program because, listen, at the time, none of us knew who Verlander was, right? We knew he was uber talented, right? And, he carved us up that night. And it was pretty special what he did. None of us ever knew he'd go on to do what he's done, but it was an opportunity to teach our guys going back to what our standard is, that's not acceptable to strike out 13 times. And they're probably looking at me saying, geez, coach, the guy's throwing 93 to 96 miles an hour. He's got a wipeout breaking ball, right? But it was an opportunity for us as coaches to set what is our competitive spirit, what is our standard. And what we did that night is not up to the standard of what Virginia baseball is. I remember that night clear as day, right? And so Verlander was really, really good that night. I'd have to say Steven Strasburg. We beat him, but in 2009, and when he pitched for San Diego State, Strasburg was considered the greatest pitcher in the history of college baseball, probably until the young man pitching at LSU 2 years ago, who's pitching for the Pirates now. He was obviously really special, but Strasburg that day, we beat him, but he punched out like 16 guys. But we did enough of the little things to win the game, and we pitched and defend. So you can beat anybody out there if you have a great offense, as Coach Mack says. It's we want a great offense, and we don't want a great hitting team, right? And a great offense can beat that great, outstanding pitcher.
Yeah, and back to Verlander and I guess that was what, spring of 05?
Yes, it was.
And that was when 93, 96. You didn't see that a ton. Now 93, 96. You see that. You might catch that in the midweek sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. It's changed a lot.
No, it's funny. I got a chance to meet Justin Verlander. I played against Justin in American Legion back when obviously when I was playing in high school, and obviously had no clue. Just knew he was going to ODU and knew he was really good, and fortunately didn't have to face him pitching that night. That was his off night. They knew they were coming to Dinwiddie, so they didn't have to throw him. But I met his dad the other week. We're doing a recruiting talk at RBA West, and we talked for a while. He had some pretty good stories about when Justin was pitching in college, and talking about Ben as well, and some guys who you know very well, the Hicks brothers.
Yeah.
Talking about some facing them in pro ball and playing with them and all that stuff. So it's always good to hear those things.
Yeah, yeah. Again, there's another example of great players in our state. I mean, you brought up some there right there. I mean, John Hicks was a great player for us for 3 years and went on to play parts of 7 years in the major leagues. And he was in our dugout last year. He was a undergraduate student coach for us last season as he finished his degree and graduated from UVA after his pro career was over. So I mean, we could talk all day about all the great players in this state. It's a lot of fun.
For sure. Coach, I truly appreciate your time. Not going to lie, if you came up, I don't think I have any eligibility left, even though it's probably some crazy eligibility rules. You told me I'm in. Just let me know. Bullpen catcher, something like that. You need anybody, but this was awesome, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, Jason, thanks for having me on, and thanks for what you do for our state, what PBR does, and really appreciate you, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Coach.